Hello and welcome to MoCDA Talk Series. We're connecting with Sofia Crespo, artist working with a huge interest in biology-inspired technologies. One of Sofia's main focus is the way organic life uses artificial mechanisms to simulate itself and evolve. This implying the idea that technologies are a byproduct of the organic life that created them and not a completely separated object. On the side, Sofia is also hugely concerned with the dynamic change in the role of the artists working with machine learning techniques. Enjoy this talk.
Hey, hello.
Hey.
We're finally live.
Hello. Yeah,
How you doing?
I wasn't working for some reason. I'm good. Well, here I am. I'm in Bogota right now. So yeah,
How's
it's
it going
been
there?
well. Over here, things are very slowly shutting down. So it's just kind of happening like a little bit behind Europe and the rest of the world. So things are just starting now. And yeah, so tomorrow, so since like our flights to Europe got canceled by the airline, we're going
Where
to.
were you meant to be flying?
So I was supposed to fly to Madrid. And from there, I would catch another flight to Berlin, but the flight to Madrid got canceled. So we decided to stay here until we can sort out the flight situation. But since that seems to be like unlikely, we are just going to go to stay in a village for quarantine and go to the countryside.
To be honest, it might be better to stay there rather than traveling around. I am in London and I've been in self-isolation for about a week now. So this is kind of the best way for me to connect to the rest of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. Thank you for joining me. It's such a pleasure to have you on this call. I know we briefly met in Miami during CADAF, but I thought it would have been nice to have you on this art chat live on Instagram, so that also people could join us and ask you questions through and just explore through your art and the works that you've been doing around neural net. I was browsing through your website and it's such an amazing journey that you've been taking. So I just wanted to ask you, how did it all started?
How it started? Well, it started at a workshop by Jean Kogan. My friend Honor took me there for my birthday, and then after that workshop, I became really into this. Like I started doing research and got to meet Jean again, and then I took another course at the School of Machines and make-believe. So making and make-believe, and that was like a month-long intensive course on machine learning for artists, and there I got to learn a lot more tools. And after that, I just kept doing research by myself mainly, and on the side trying to learn as much as I could. As basically I didn't know like anything about programming before this. I didn't know much. I knew like really basic web development stuff, but like really basic stuff. So I just kind of like, this got me interested in data science as a subject. And it's just been a fascinating journey. I mean, it has been a lot of like emotional ups and downs over the last week, but overall, like when I look back, it's been a steady like growing learning curve. So
Yeah. So did you start by learning around technologies and machine learning, or did you always have an interest for art?
Yes, well, art, yes. Art I've been doing like already since quite a few years, but I wasn't sharing as much of my work. I was more like a loner doing my own thing. So with Traumadol, that was well, that's an older project before Neural Zoo. I started to use this pseudonym just to post my work and slowly gaining some confidence to share more and more.
Have you ever
I
done
think
some
it's,
paintings or sculpture or anything as such before
yeah, I
experimenting
mean,
in digital?
yeah, I've done, I used to do like digital illustrations for a while, then I did films. Painting by hand, I've never been good at. It's always like I had a phase where I did like analog photography. I had a lot of like kind of phases where I explore different techniques.
Uh-huh.
The latest one was doing cyanotype, which is like an older printing technique. So actually we did that already with a machine learning generated imagery, but we printed it, so using UV light from the sun, or from an artificial UV light source actually, because in Germany we didn't have that good of a UV light source. So
Yeah,
but
cloudy.
sometimes I like going back. Yeah, I like going back to non-digital tools from time to time. It's kind of like a routing process, or yeah. There's something nice about
Do
like
you
also
still use it
using,
to...
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
like no, I like, so painting like with a brush and like the traditional way I'm not good at, but I do like painting, for example, with my fingers, like using natural pigments. So so the outcomes wouldn't look as nice, like wouldn't look like a like a painting, like a traditional painting, you know. But it's something that I like just grabbing leaves from the floor and smashing it with a rock, and then like using like chlorophyll to
Yes.
paint with. Or yeah, that's something like it's just so different to the other workflows I have going for art that it kind of pushes me to go connect with something else.
I see. So do you still use it as a way of finding like a new path for new projects, or going back to explore some techniques that you would like to keep developing but taking it within a digital space? So how does it work for you when you start a new project? Where do you start? Do you start from a digital element, or from a machine learning, for example, element where there is an algorithm, or do you start from a more artistic, physical element?
Usually, I think more of like a natural source. So sometimes would be like growth of a particular uh, species that I'm interested in, or I start thinking about something in the natural world that catches my attention and makes and I kind of meditate on it. So, for example, chromatophores. That's like the ability of certain species to blend with the environment. They have cells that contain pigments in them. And so, for example, an octopus can look like a rock, you know, and blend with it. And so that's something that, for example, recently I started reading about. And then as I was working on a collaboration recently, I started to think like, oh, is there a way we could visualize this using machine learning? Is there a way we could have a creature blending with the environment and show like an array of different creatures that are able to do that using these technologies? So that's kind of like where I would start.
That's so fascinating. And is that how you started working on your neural zoo project?
Yeah, pretty much. I think it was very intuitive. Like I just wanted to see like very how to say like I just wanted to visualize a texture that didn't have a particular that didn't like to visualize a creature, but without having it as a recognizable whole. So to be able to see something and to like, oh, there's some jellyfish nests in here, but this isn't a particular jellyfish that I can identify and say that it exists in the real world. So in a way, it's kind of like a surrealistic approach somehow, like vaguely surrealistic.
Yeah.
I guess there's also this book, like I've used quite a few books as references that inspired me. I don't know if you know about like the Codex Seraphinianus.
Rings a bell, but I'm not sure. I haven't read it. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, it's a book, but it's all like a constructed language and creatures, basically. So it's made by an Italian architect called Luigi Serafini, I think. I cannot remember the year right now, but okay, doesn't matter.
We can add it as a reference for reading in the chat.
Oh,
we can put like suggested readings at the end.
So can I write it here as a comment, maybe?
Yes, you can, so people can see it, and I will make sure to check it out as well.
Seraphinianus.
What is the book about it? Oh, Codex. Okay, Seraphinianus. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So what I like about it is that it combines. It would show like a creature made from different parts. So like maybe I can show some bits and pieces. It's pretty bizarre. I think it's worth showing.
That would be wonderful if you had anything to show us.
Yeah. And he constructed a whole language script for the book. And it's like it's kind of like in the natural history aesthetic. In a natural history, like, yeah. So I think natural history is also something that I find really, really inspiring.
And how do you take all of this, outbreak of the virus? Do you think this is going to make part of your next artwork? I mean, I'm trying to be ironic here, but I'm just saying, how does that impact in your work? Because now that we're all confined within our, houses, apartments, it is because of what is happening right now in terms of the environment and the nature is kind of telling us now, we'll have to face the consequences of perhaps the globalization or the fact that we've been impacting on the natural ecosystem so much. And so how does that sort of take part into your artistic vision?
Yeah, that's definitely something I've been thinking about. Well, like two things. On one side, of course, all the issues now with the virus, they affect me as a person, and therefore they affect the art I make. it's a growing process for me, I think, now, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm challenged with like kind of rethinking my profession and my life around it. So I kind of like had a day where I really kind of freaked. I thought, okay, if everything, like all my work gets canceled, how am I gonna survive as an artist? Kind of like just started really worrying about my future. And I tweeted about it, and a lot of people, I realized like there's a lot of people out there feeling the same way, who've been thinking about this. So I felt really supported, actually. I also felt like I made myself really vulnerable by saying this, you know, like, what am I gonna do? Like, do I even have enough money to survive and keep making art? So, like, to me,
it's challenging. I've been having the same thoughts because, you know, most people still have to carry on with their lives and go to work and face so many challenges during that day. And I feel the same, and I think for artists it's going to be extremely challenging, and this is inevitably going to impact on the way we think, we live, and we create art. We had some questions coming through. Eleonora was asking, what do you think are the colors of the virus? Yesterday we were talking about color of our DNA with Vesa. Which I'm also very interested to hear how, you know, it gets created. So it's actually quite interesting, you know, visualizing something that is so volatile. We can't see it, we can't fight it. It's a war we're fighting against the unknown. So yeah, what do you think the color of the virus would be?
Oh my God. I think I saw somebody sharing an electron microscope image recently, and it had like a pinkish blue color. There was a pink and blue. That's what I remember. So I can like I've seen it depicted as green a lot, which I find interesting too, because it's kind of like there's something very symbolic there. If you try to send like the virus icon on WhatsApp, you see it as green, you know?
Yeah. Although, you know, I've seen little artist who's been posting on Instagram an image of Tom Hanks fighting the virus, and I think the whole background is bright pink. So maybe not everyone thinks the virus is green.
There's also, I mean, I guess in nature, like this, you know how certain animals which are poisonous have like very bright colors?
And
which is kind of like, like signaling danger. Or there are sometimes like bioluminescence or somebody commented it's a vaporwave virus. I like this. Like maybe it's vaporwave, who knows? Like it's kind of interesting as well, like we're rendering the photo spectrum, like with what we are able to see, right? With what we are able to perceive. But it would be interesting to see, like, to think of different colors, right? Like, what colors can we? I like this. I like this because it breaks my head somehow, like to think, oh, what color can I not see?
Yeah,
like, you know,
sometimes we make assumptions of, you know, what things should look like in terms of the shape or the colors, but these are all assumptions. So when we are going to define something that we've never framed before, it is quite interesting to see how our imagination, you know, can freely go and create something that maybe or maybe not relate to the actual form or color of the virus in this case.
Yeah. Yeah, multispectral imaging. So that's when they use that to, for example, look at planets like
Mm-hmm.
outside. Yeah, like outside our planet, just to extract different data
Mm-hmm.
from the landscape. So, so we have like, for example, like red or like RBG, red, blue, green. But then like multispectral imaging, you could have like a lot more channels that could be
Mm-hmm.
extracted from data. So using like special sensors to capture those light frequencies. And it's interesting because like when we look at them, the images are rendered as maybe like an alpha channel or something that we are able to see. And I wonder like, where is this in the spectrum? Like where, like how can I create a mental representation of this? It's kind of like thinking in more dimensions than 3 dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
already like my brain short circuits when I try to imagine more dimensions or more colors.
And when you use machine learning, how do you feel about the training that you give to the machine learning, and what is the role of the artist in doing so?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Um, there's there's something very arbitrary about it. So I like approaching it from the perspective of we have a responsibility to try to communicate and stick to the values we believe in.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as possible, Sometimes something I wonder about because I work with the natural diversities. I think, am I doing some kind of speciation, like saying
Mm-hmm.
this looks beautiful, but this other doesn't, And that's something I try to rethink, like why does this look aesthetically pleasing to me?
Mm-hmm.
Or why does this other creature, like in this way of being photographed, doesn't look aesthetically pleasing? And most of the time, so I take the time to think about these things, and I take the time to think like, why do I feel this way about this creature? Why do I dislike this moth in particular now, but not the other moth that looks really nice and pretty?
So do you
um,
see then the artist becoming more like a curator, somebody that will somehow perform a selection upon the results, the rendering of the machine learning? And do you play these by the colors, the shapes, going back to the colors, what does it attract you when you're going through the rendering?
mm-hmm.
What do you privilege? If we're talking about shapes and colors or similar forms that you might have seen within nature. And another
Mm-hmm.
question I had, if you were going to 3D print, for example, any of these creatures, how would you see them becoming alive if they were going to be kind of like a mutation of species between like an android or an actual living creature?
Mm-hmm.
This is a very long question, but yeah, what would you select them by? Form, color, something that looks similar to you, and if you were going to like create them in the physical world, which
I
one would
think
you select and how?
so. I noticed that I have a tendency towards like invertebrates. So I
Mm.
realized like, oh, I'm really privileging invertebrates. And yeah, to just like I love marine invertebrates, but also arthropods. And
Mm.
we've recently done 3D printing.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to work more on the internal structure, so not to stay on the outside, but also to to look at the interior and the functioning of the creature. So to start looking at the internal organs and their functionality. Because I think I don't know, like that's something that I've been thinking about for a while as well. Like I'm just looking at them from the outside. But there's also this kind of biology driven or like curiosity that asks me to look at them from the inside, so to see them as a kind of transparent being, but looking at what is inside of them, what can the creature do, what are they made of, and how do they
sorry
and how do they interact with their environment. Yeah.
So you see them as living things?
Yeah, I mean, I see them as living things. Yeah. I think I had a time when I got really depressed and I started generating bones, and then I realized, no, I need to go back to me, they're alive. They're alive and thriving.
That's so beautiful. And I was so curious, how would you see them from the inside? Can you, when you are creating them, are you able to program that, or are you just going by, again, feeding with data and training and then experimenting by looking at the renderings? Or is that a way that you could create, let's say, 3D models that you can go inside and seeing from the inside into the outside and see how these living creatures interact with others and with the world that you've been creating?
So that would be like one step ahead from what, like that would be the step ahead, like to what I want to move towards.
I see. So for now, are you just imagining the internal worlds, or are you able to draw this, or?
Yeah, we're arbitrarily, like we're arbitrarily generating the anatomy now, so it doesn't feel like we've been generating beetles, for example, like beetle-like.
Yes, I've seen some pictures. So beautiful.
And then we took books about biology of arthropods and like mainly beetle anatomy. And then we fed that into a natural language processing network, GPT-2, that can learn. And then we generated new parts of their body. But it's kind of like an arbitrary assignment at the moment. It isn't like fully detecting the anatomical part yet on the 3D model. So that would be like another step to go. It's like one step forward. So,
of course, yeah. And is that what you're going to do next? Is that what is coming up next for you?
Yeah, we would like to, right now we're making like a family tree of the creatures. So because they're fed with the same data set, and that means they are related. So they all belong to the same family, and they're different variations. As the steps at which the network learned different features. And so we start by extracting one, and then in the network we can see how related one is to the other. Like, kind of like on an average of how close they are to each other. And yeah, that's something we're working on, mapping that at the moment.
I see.
So yeah.
And yeah, I was looking if there was any question from the people that are watching this. It's so great to see there's so many people seeing us. But yes, if you do guys have questions for Sofia, please make sure you send them through. I was going to ask you, where can we see your art? What are you going to exhibit next, or where is your art available to see both online and offline?
So we'll see, because I was obviously going to show my art at a few places, but they've been getting canceled or postponed.
As you can see, we're all using like online and social media to keep connected.
Yeah. And I think like, so I'm a rather shy person, I think. Some people tell me, no, you seem very extroverted. I make such a big effort to open up and be less shy. So to me, it's like, how do I even begin to show people my work online? Like, I'm so not used to that. So like, this is already challenging for me.
But I'm so happy we're doing this. It's such a great way to connect with each other, because otherwise, I mean, of course, now with the internet, it is easy enough to stay connected. But in a way, this is kind of like breaking all frontiers. And I know proximity, unfortunately, is impossible, during these days. But we're trying to keep positive and to stay creative. Yeah, have you thought about exhibiting online? And if you were going to do so, what would you think would work best for your work? Would you have it in a VR environment, or would you have it more into like an AR or XR? I don't know. Have you thought about that? How would you see your work becoming, interactive?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I'm like, I haven't been thinking that much about web technologies yet. I think like I've seen other artists sharing live their workflow or making videos about it. And I'm thinking more like, okay, maybe I can start doing something like that, like showing people some of my workflow or what I'm gonna do with it, and to open up a bit more about the part of where I'm creating.
So do you mean by including the process?
Yeah, the process. Yeah, because like that's the process sometimes looks less glamorous,
but it's a journey. It's all that takes you to get to the end of your creation. So I think it's so important, and it's such a understanding and living through that journey alongside the artist. I think that's what makes the audience becoming so attached to the final work, and understand and go beyond what you may not see there, and the whole story behind it. Domenico here is suggesting the white page gallery. I don't know, but you can check it out and definitely ask him. We had it live on our chat a few days back. But yes, it's a great project, and it's definitely worth for artists to experiment in that space. But you can definitely ask him questions.
Yeah. So
thank you guys for
share.
the lovely messages
I'm
you're
just
sending.
thinking.
It's so great.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I was thinking, so maybe I can share with you some of my inspirations, a few books that are interesting, that have been...
Oh yes, please. I think it would be interesting for us to see where you take on from creating art.
Parallel botany.
When do you normally start creating art? I know I've asked you these earlier, but do you refer like to books, or how would you start the search? And also the themes, because you are very much interested in biodiversity, and I've seen you've been working with neural nets. I was going to ask you, what does it interest you about nature and biodiversity? And also, how do you see technologies applied to this theme, let's say, and why would you select specific technologies over other? For example, if we're talking about 3D design or modeling, or, you know, for example, creating into the virtual world or films, because you said you were into films as well. So I'm thinking, how do you match, let's say, the theme you are selecting and researching about and the technology?
Yeah, so that's what I really like about, for example, when I started learning about neural networks, I was fascinated by the fact that they are vaguely inspired in like the functioning of the brain, just very vaguely, like they don't try to map the brain, but they were inspired by neuroscientific research on the visual cortex of cats, and I thought that was really, really fascinating. And
wow,
then suddenly learning about computer vision started like teaching me more about my own vision. So thinking like, oh, in computer vision, we need to look at edges to be able to distinguish, you know, to distinguish where an object ends and where another one begins. So we need to detect those edges, and then if we feed them to a machine learning model, the machine learning model needs to put the edges together somehow to extract semantic content for us. And so this thing started teaching me about how my own vision works. You know, if I saw like a little piece of a door, I wouldn't immediately know that it's a door, but I would know that it's a door if I see all the components of the door together, or the door in the context of being a door. So then suddenly I was learning about my own biological processes through these technologies, and I started feeling emotional about it. I feel like, wow, I need to learn more about this.
And you feel that like using neural nets is somehow connected to the way we as humans learn about the world, for example.
Exactly. It's like how we learn about beauty, you know, like a thing can be beautiful. Like throughout my life, I've redefined beauty so many times and what is beautiful to me. And as an artist, that's what I like, challenging myself to look at something and see like, oh, what can I find beautiful in this? What makes me feel that makes me feel emotional about it. It's a very emotional process, and I think there's something beautiful as well about feeling emotional about certain algorithms, because an algorithm sounds like something so cold that you cannot feel emotional in any way about it, but I do feel emotional about it. So yeah.
It's the first
So
time
there's
I
something
hear
about
this.
like
It's so, you know, fascinating that in a way there is a true communication between humans and machines, because in a way, you know, it's something that is an extension to us, but also is a companion. I see technology also as something that we use to communicate, but it has its own intelligence in a way, although, you know, AI has been questioned whether, you know, it is biased or is influenced by humans. But in a way, the fact that algorithms can prove love and communicate that, it's a beautiful concept.
Yeah. So for example, recently I was just learning about ways we we think of like evolution and evolution, like genetic algorithms. And I was looking at all the different applications that they have, and there are so many different ways of approaching this as well, you know. Like, how do we select, how do we say like, oh, this is a good feature for this creature to have, but this isn't a good feature for the creature to have, you know? So I'm kind of like, I was thinking, you know, when all of this gets applied to humans, it suddenly becomes so so conflicting suddenly, and it makes me think like how can we bring more awareness to these things? Like, yeah, I
think, you know, in a way, it will teach us so much, you know, to understand what it means for a machine or for a genetic algorithm to understand how we as human function, and to be like a mirror to us, because I feel that sometimes we do forget. Like, you know, during these days, I feel that humanity is getting back some sanity, you know, because it's fighting for its own community. So I feel that these features are within us, but in a way we tend to forget because external factors play such a strong role on us and influence us that we somehow forget. So I think the genetic algorithms in a way can bring back those elements of the humans and the biodiversity, for instance, and remind us all of what it means to be connected.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody is, a few people have been writing to us, so I just wanted to share with everyone. I got so many comments recently describing emotions of people seeing some of my algorithm generative work.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to learn about the emotions of us humans looking at algorithms and respond to that. It's kind of like a visionary world where we will be interacting with androids, for example, and how would that feel?
Yeah.
Would you
definitely.
like to live in a world where you see your creatures becoming alive and interacting with them?
I think so. I mean, I would like to, but maybe that's just because it's part of my personal meditation. So it's like I see them as a meditation on nature and what, how to fool my own senses in a way, like what makes me see that this is an image of something that is alive, and this is an image of something that is dead, and this is an image of something that looks like a beetle, and this is an image of something that doesn't look like a beetle. And when do I start seeing it as now it looks like an insect, now it doesn't? Those are things that I think about. So now it's like, oh, now it's behaving like a beetle, but now it's not behaving like a beetle. So those are the kind of things that I meditate upon. So I find it interesting to see like where this threshold is. Of course, I approach it from a very non-scientific way because I didn't study science per se, so it's just like not academically. So I follow like an artistic work completely. But I just, there's something kind of naive about it too, where, you know, we can all agree on this looking vaguely like a beetle, you know.
But in a way, you know, it's all a perception, because so many species have adapted and keep changing according to how the whole ecosystem is been developing. So somehow when you look at something that you recognize and you associate that with something that is alive, you will naturally develop feelings to that. Whereas something that doesn't look so much alive, then it looks like a thing. And so we feel more detached and are more objective towards these things. But in a way, this is just our perception and the way we've been educated to look at the world. But
Definitely.
it's so fascinating to see how this is shifting. For example, when you were saying about feeling emotional when you're looking at an algorithm, that's exactly how I feel, you know, that things that are in a way not living can make us feel very much alive.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a very special, there's a very special example for this from Carl Sims made this simulation of evolving virtual creatures with genetic algorithms, and I can just show. I don't know how good this will look. But,
yeah, I can see the screen. Yeah, Carl Sims. Okay.
So he made this a while ago, I think. These simulations of creatures that learn, for example, to swim, to fly, to crawl, etc. And it's really interesting to see them interacting with each other because he put like a like a prize in the middle that they had to go towards. So they got rewarded for moving towards that and trying to keep the other creature apart, away from it. And so it's interesting to see, like, for example, that one that just holds it, you know. It's kind of like, oh, so selfish, you know. Suddenly we have all these emotions about them that are kind of like human projections of what they are doing.
Yeah, because these are very much like human traits that we all connect to. The fact that we need to, you know, have this sense of being selfish sometimes, and get into competitions.
Exactly. And I suddenly found myself being so judgmental of them, saying like, "Oh, that's a very aggressive approach." Like there's one creature that first pushes the other one away and then grabs the prize, whereas there's some that just try to lock it without touching the other.
Do you know if this is a programmed ending or whether this is part of the interaction?
What do you mean?
I mean, from the Carl Sims creation, do you know if, you know, the outcome of that story was programmed or was it just made out of the interaction between the algorithms or the code that is behind the visual rendering?
I think, well, I don't know everything about the algorithm itself, but that he used for this, but I just guess they have like a set of different strategies for maybe like predetermined strategies. Yeah, I don't know everything like
training. What I'm thinking is perhaps if we do train our own code to behave in a certain way, it will become, you know, a reflection of our behaviors. But how would it be if it was not biased, you know, or does such a thing exist?
Okay.
Or is it possible not to influence the code we're writing?
I
I don't know if there's an answer to
Somehow
that.
I think that there's no way of not being biased to some extent, but I think that it is good to try to be as less biased as possible.
Or at least to be mindful about it.
Exactly, to be mindful about it. Yeah, to be, first of all, to be open, being open to be told that the code is biased or that something is biased, you know. I think that's already a lot to ask for a lot of
I think especially
companies, for example.
Especially for an artist, because you put so much about yourself and your personality in a work sometimes that that becomes part of you and what you like to communicate, and how easy it is to feel in a way detached to that and create something that can exist in its own right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
fascinating. Wow. I can't wait to live in a world where all your creatures will be living their own lives and, you know, living in such a world of fantastic creatures. And
it would, I find it amazing when people see, when people find something on the work that I never noticed before. You know, it's like, I love when somebody comes and says, look, there's a face here, or look, there's something here that looks like another creature. And I never say, no, it doesn't. No, there's no way that because I think that it isn't just about me. It's also about the observer. It's also about the person who is looking at it and how they choose to look at it.
And would you normally guide your you know, the people that look at your art? Would you give some story behind the work, about the work and how it was created, or would you rather have people to look at the work and think and feel or relate with it as they, you know, as they wish?
Yeah. So like there's some people who come and ask me and they say like, oh, you should talk more about you and how you arrived here. And I do talk about it when they ask me, like now, for example, but when I show the work, I don't talk that much about me. I more like want people to look at it and see what speaks to them.
And do you normally find that you discover things that you haven't maybe thought about it by, you know, listening or talking to people that see the work that you create?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, a lot of this. Like I had people making really good points about symmetry and how symmetry is being learned. People asking me about the algorithms, and then me being like, no, I never used that algorithm, but that's a very good idea.
Yeah, so it's kind of like giving you an inspiration maybe as well.
Yeah. So I love that communication.
I see. Yeah.
So that's why I try to detach it, from myself and to have it exist there by itself.
It's beautiful. Well, Sofia, thank you so much. I just looked at the time and an hour is already gone, and I can't believe we've been talking.
Oh, really? Wow.
But it's been
that went really fast.
Yes. And I also keep looking at the window behind me, and I'm like, oh, wow, it's already dark outside, but it's been so great to talk to you.
Yes, and also thank you to everybody who's sending support.
Yeah, thank you for everyone who joined us and asked questions. It's been so wonderful to share these lives with you. And just a quick reminder, we'll be streaming live every day at 6 p.m. London time. So if you'd like to connect, we will be sharing stories with artists every day. And this is to keep us connected and, you know, to keep us staying creative and keep safe during these days. So thank you everyone for sharing these moments with us. And Sofia, thank you. You've been amazing. I've learned so much about art and the algorithms, and feeling so passionate about the code now that, you know, I can't wait to look at the algorithms now. But yes, it's been wonderful. If you want to share with us the reference for the readings that you've been talking about, where you find the inspirations and the artists and the authors that you mentioned, that'll be great, so everyone can also go and have a look and do some research.
Perfect.
Okay.
So,
well, much. It's been a pleasure.
I'm going to share that.
Stay safe and
thank you to everyone.
Okay, thank you so much.
Stay safe.
I think you can just write it in the chat and people will see. Okay, thank you, Sofia.
Okay.
Take care now and speak to you soon.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.